positive impact. We're continuing on with Revelation. And again, I'm a future generator, here to help you generate the future you choose. It's up to you. So continuing on with Revelation 2, the letter to Smyrna reads like this. Chapter 2, starting with verse 8 in the contemporary English version. This is what you must write to the angel of the church in Smyrna. I am the first and the last. I died, but now I am alive. Listen to what I say. I know how much you suffer and how poor you are, but you are rich. I also know the cruel things being said about you by people who claim to be God's people, but they are not really God's people. They are a group that belongs to Satan. Don't worry about what you will suffer. The devil will throw some of you into jail, and you will be tested and made to suffer for 10 days. But if you are faithful until you die, I will reward you with a glorious life. If you have ears to listen, if you have ears to hear, listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. Whoever wins the victory will not be hurt by the second death. You can hide, but you can't run. I said you can hide, but you can't run. Run where? But you can hide under the shadow. So let's explain. Please keep in mind too that, again, like I said before, don't attach these things to events, because you'll end up falling under that category of a generation that seeketh after a sign. Don't look for physical signs. These are patterns. Pick up on the patterns. There's daily life lessons in every line, every verse. So here's the accountability scripture, how it opens up. I am the first and the last. I died, but now I am alive. Listen to what I say. This is God addressing you, within you. When it comes to your life, who's first? When you wake up, who's the first person you're aware of? You. So you're the first and the last when it comes to your life. God put your life under your jurisdiction. And yes, you died, but now you're alive. Just like Paul said in earlier verses, I die daily. Everybody does. You don't know where you go when you sleep. That's like death. But you're alive right now, and that's what matters. And in the scripture, there's actually an exclamation point with, but now I am alive. Because that's important. Now you're alive. You might have died before. You literally, some people have come back from the dead, for real. Died on operating tables, pronounced dead. But you're alive right now. So listen to what I say. That's what it says here. I know how much you suffer and how poor you are, but you are rich. What does he mean by that? I know how much you suffer and how poor you are. Poor according to who? According to your bank account? Because in this world, poverty is associated with the absence of material possessions and status. So you might be lacking in that area, or not where you want to be in that area. So in a way you suffer. But at the same time it says you are rich. What makes you rich? Not being associated with the traps and pitfalls that come with hanging around rich people. You won't know until you're around that crowd. The temptations are higher, the stakes are higher. Things are a lot more dangerous. Life gets very slippery, and you can get real dizzy in high places. So you're rich just by virtue of some of the material possessions you lack, believe it or not. And I know that sounds a little contradictory to say, because we all want to upgrade our life, and one of the most obvious ways to express that openly is through the acquisition of things and experiences. So we all have our desires, and besides, these things were created for us to enjoy. So it's really not a sin to desire the things that God can bless you with. But You're rich because you don't have so many of these things that your life is under the jurisdiction of those things. That's what makes you rich. You can hide, but you can't run. You can't run from your purpose. But by virtue of God's grace, you've been hidden from what the world considers rich, but equates to spiritual poverty. So you can hide. It's just that you can't run. Jonah was able to hide. Running is what got him in trouble. So we're inclined to hide from those cruel people who say cruel things about us. And they claim to be God's people. Let's make sure that we don't fall into this category. This group that belongs to Satan. What is Satan? Satan is defined as an adversarial force, opposition, antagonism, looking at the glass half empty. Don't get caught up in trying to look for some figure, because you'll be caught up and categorized after an adulterous generation that seeketh after a sign. Nope. Apply this to your daily life. That adversarial force, that antagonism, that anti-spirit, you got to let that go. And to avoid being associated with that group, you have to not say cruel things about people. You can say honest things about people, just don't say cruel things about people. Because if you do, this is like saying you have a calling card and a membership with the group that belongs to Satan. You see how that works? Belonging to antagonism involves verbal cruelty, and you'll find that most often among those who claim to be God's people. If that weren't an issue, it wouldn't have came up in the last book of the Bible. It's an issue. It's coming out of the churches. It's coming out of the temples. It's coming out of the synagogues. There's people in there saying real cruel things about people, or else it wouldn't come up this late in the game, right? But here's the good news though. Verse 10. Don't worry about what you will suffer. The devil will throw some of you into jail, and you will be tested and made to suffer for 10 days. Here's what messes us up about the tests and the trials we go through. We worry about them. Don't worry about what you'll suffer. If you're going to suffer, come out of it strong. If you worry about it, you're going to go into that suffering too weak to last, too weak to endure the suffering. If you worry about the suffering. If you don't worry about the suffering, and your mind and heart is focused on something else, then you'll endure the suffering, whatever it is. And the devil, that opposition, that opposing spirit, that adversary, accusatory spirit, that accusatory energy, that accusatory angel will throw some of you into bonds, into jail, lock some of you down. I mean, it's happening on a mass scale now. I mean, we pretty much locked down with the COVID situation. For some people, their house is like jail, depending on who's under their roof. They might be with it. I mean, I'll let that go, but it's kind of like a prison in the world right now, the way things are, tense and very robotic, so to speak. So that's a test. It feels like it's been going on for much longer than 10 days, but 10 days kind of points to being longer than a week. That's like time and a half. Not quite 2 weeks, but 10 days. Seems like it's whatever you going through, the problem ain't gone by the time the weekend shows up. You still got the people saying cruel things about you. You still suffering things. You still don't feel like you have enough. You still feel like hiding, and you can. It's just that you can't run. You have to deal with what you have to deal with, but it might require seclusion for you to go and hide it to get it together first. And that's okay. That's okay. So while you do that, here's your instruction. Remain faithful until you die. and you will be rewarded with a glorious life. Don't look at this so morbidly. Again, don't attach this to events. Attach this to a daily life lesson, a practice. Okay? What part of you has to die when it says you die? Obviously the ego. God doesn't want you to physically die. It's your ego. If you remain faithful, if you remain loyal, if you remain consistent, steadfast, if you say what you mean and mean what you say long enough, faithful, if you're faithful, if you're always ready, if you're faithful, until your ego disappears, then life will be glorious. You know why life is hard? Because the ego does not die. We don't remain faithful until we die. We remain faithful until our ego gets out of control. So we don't die. And what dies? Our faith. So instead of having a glorious life, we have a rough life, a hard knock life. And you're knocking hard until your hand breaks. Hard knocks. But the door is harder than your hand is. So I would implore you, as the Spirit would implore us, please be faithful until your ego dies. And then life will get good. And then life will be glorious. Let's conclude with verse 11. If you have ears, and for the most part we all do, but if you have ears to listen, then listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. Whoever wins the victory will not be hurt by the second death. So think victory, breathe victory, be a victor, not a victim. And then you won't die twice. Being cruel makes you die twice, because anger is just a cover-up for being hurt. Anger and being cruel and being mean and being nasty is just a cover-up for being scared. Bitter and stuck up, that's just a cover-up for being scared. You afraid. So you die twice. So let your ego die, so that life can be glorious. You need to have things to sing about instead of complain about. This is Torian with positive impact. Happy existence, people. For consultations, contact me at Supertsigma@gmail.com.